Hey everyone, Georgie here with Ukraine Matters. We're gonna start talking right about the hottest direction there is, the Avdiivka direction. The first news that come in is that reports are that Russia is taking some of the units from Kupiansk direction and sending them over to reinforce Avdiivka direction. So we might see additional attacks coming in from the Russian side. Moreover, additional analysis has shown that right now Russians are mostly concentrating in the south side of Avdiivka, so around Vodine, instead of the north, despite the northern part having more progress, and we're going to talk in details about this. The southern part seems to be where Russians are accumulating. On one side, it might be from the fact that they want to do additional push, or on the other side, it might be because they are anticipating more Ukrainian pressure, because there was already certain Ukrainian counterattacks. And let's actually talk about these counterattacks. So a couple of weeks into this offensive, Ukrainians decided to conduct a counterattack, which was quite logical when you look at it, because the goal of Russians is very, very simple. If I just move this, the goal of Russians is to try to attack from this part over here. Terikon, where is the slag heap, is right over here. Russians are reportedly right now are at least partially controlling Terikon. I perceive it as they fully control Terikon, and they're able basically from this position to secure any kind of this southern direction, to block it off. And now their goal would be to move forward, and I think their ultimate goal is this village of Orlivka, sorry. And from that sense, what Russians would want the best is they would want to go to the village of Toninke over here to meet up at Orlyanka. So in my perspective, Orlyanka is specifically the ground zero for both parts of this encirclement to convene. And if we are then assuming that Russians thinking, okay, North progress, doing quite well, good, let's try to focus then on something else. Let's try to focus on the situation around the south. So in here, Ukrainians are looking and saying, okay, Russians definitely want to go north from here, right? They want to go to this Toninka village to later go to Orlivka and so on. So that's their goal. Then if they're going to continue moving and focusing towards the north, then we as Ukrainians, if we conduct a counterattack this direction and try to take over this highway, then we're effectively cutting off any kind of plans that they're having, securing Avdiivka, and just creating a very, very good setup for any kind of potential further defense. It's a logical move. The problem with that is, unfortunately, is that this area over here around the village of Pisky, and I'm going to move it just a little bit so you can see. So this area here around Pisky is really difficult terrain. Remember, at the start of the war, we were talking about Pisky a lot, and it's specifically because the village is located on a very, very, very favorable terrain for the defenders. There is like a creek, there is some water bodies, there are a couple of bridges that one can hide under, there are a whole network of tunnels and trenches that Russians are now utilizing after capturing from Ukrainians. This is not a very easy nut to crack. So Ukrainians, while they did attack, while this plan is good, specifically with Russia now concentrating forces in this area, I'm not yet confident that Ukraine will still have the forces and resources that they would like to dedicate to achieve this victory. So far, I can say it like this. So far, I will use a phrase from my old book, and I will say that Avdiivka is fine. But situation is not stable. Russians are still having resources, and we are knowing that they are reinforcing additionally. They are having success at the north. They are already more or less in control of the Terikon, which is a very important objectives. Beyond that, at the north here, they are able to also demonstrate that they've reached this how to say, the railway line, and they already started not only reaching railway line, but they also started expanding south of the railway line towards the chemical plant we were discussing in the last video, which that, but they're also trying to expand it north along the railway line to make sure that they expand this whole territory they control, so their gap, like that body that trying to reach over Ukrainian around Avdiivka is as wide as possible. Can Russia do this? Well, I do feel that the possibility for Russia is still there. I still have not heard reports that Ukrainians were able to efficiently stop Russians. However, what we do note is that a lot less equipment by Russians are utilized, and a lot more it's only manpower that is trying to advance on these Avdiivka directions. On the other hand, right now, Russians already did some of the major parts of the work. They did major pushes. They already took some kind of tactical positions in the area. They've reached the chemical plant, whatever. They've reached some of the villages and the railway here. And from there, they already can start using maybe smaller groups, like just a unit, people on their feet. But again, it's costly. The problem is that we don't know how much resources Russia is ready to expand on this operation. In my perspective, it feels like because this is a political decision that decide that we need to capture this, I think that they will be fighting until they are physically exhausted, until there are literally no more men to send. With regards to situation around Bakhmut and around Robotine, I think Ukrainians right now are really preoccupied around Avdiivka. So I feel that a lot of forces have been accessibly sent to try to stop Russian offensive. I feel that Ukrainians are now fully understood that this is the main Russian offensive. And I believe that right now, any kind of additional reinforcements will not go to Bakhmut or towards Robotine. Instead, they're going to be funneled towards Avdiivka direction to make sure to destroy as much Russians as possible. To do offensive, one needs to always supply the offensive with resources. Always, always, always supply more and more and more resources. And I believe all these operations, and to be honest, I was not sure if I want to call or not, but something still bugs me about this operation on the left bank of Dnipro. Left bank, for the people that don't know, is the bank that you see while looking down the stream of Dnipro. Dnipro flows this way, over here. So if you look over here, then this is the right bank, this is the left bank. Easy to understand. But what Ukrainians are doing on the left bank of Dnipro, I still feel that this is there only to make sure that it causes problems for the Russians, and only to make sure Russians don't forget about this direction and continue sending in reinforcements. If you're enjoying this so far, please consider pressing like, subscribe, and a bell so you get notifications when new videos are up. You can support me by buying a coffee, but more importantly, go to the first comment and support the Ukrainian armed forces. And second part of this video, I want to dedicate to something that I'm unfortunately still seeing people missing out. I see people, even on Discord of my channel, where I thought people were super educated about everything because they listen to all of my videos, and I think I explain certain things very clearly and repeatedly. We're still seeing discussions of people talking about whether or not Ukraine should go to the 1991 border, whether or not certain territories should or should not be fought for by Ukraine. And people are completely missing the point. I think we started to forget. So I'm going to switch it over here. As useless as UN is as an organization, certain parts of it are at least delivering something. They're not doing anything on it, but at least there's some talking points that we can discuss. On the 20th of October, UN Special Independent International Commission of Inquiry for Ukrainian to document the evidence of the Russian atrocities, evidence that Russian authorities have committed war crimes. They've put a report up. Let's look at this report, because here they look at what did the explosives, Russian explosives, missiles did, what about the torture, sexual abuse, gender-based violence, deportation of children. Let's talk about this in detail. And I'm sorry, it can be getting really, really graphic over here. What interesting is, like, for explosions, Ukrainian cities are being shelled every day. People are dying every day. And you see, even this commission that was on the ground is saying we didn't find any presence of military in majority of cases. Then they also investigated that torture was widely used by Russian authorities in occupied Ukrainian provinces. Torture was prevalent everywhere. Torture was systematic. Torture was something that Russians did and are still doing to Ukrainians on the occupied territories. The fact that we're just not seeing it because Ukraine hasn't deoccupied these territories doesn't mean that the people there are not being tortured. Ukrainian people, citizens of Ukraine, why are they worse than people that are now living on liberated territories? Why are they worse than people that have not been occupied at all because Ukrainian army secured the borders and didn't allow Russians to move in to other territories? We need to understand that every day many crimes are being committed on Ukrainians. It's atrocious. Testimonies collected by the commission show that perpetrators disregarded the life and dignity of the victims. Witnesses report situations in which torture has been committed with such brutality that it led to death. In a detention facility in a school in Bilaevka village, Kherson province, co-detainees requested medical care when a victim presented signs of respiratory distress immediately after being tortured. So the guy was tortured, then he started dying basically in a cell, and Russians said, haha, this is what you need, this is what you deserve. Let's go further. In the majority of cases, detainees were held in inhuman conditions, confirming a previous pattern identified by the Commission. Many of the detention periods were prolonged, with some lasting for over 100 days. People were held for hundreds of days, and it's on the occupied Kherson that was liberated quite fast. There are still people that are detained from the moment of occupation, and they're being tortured every day. Every day you wake up, you go to work, you eat your burger and so on. I do the same. But at some point, people in Ukraine are being tortured. And then you come home and then you start discussing, well, does Ukraine need to go to 1991 border? I'm not sure. Let's go further. Russian authorities principally used torture against people, the persons they suspected of providing any form of support to Ukrainian authorities. The key word here is that suspected. So anyone that Russians didn't like are now being tortured. It doesn't matter if they collaborated, didn't collaborate. It's a matter of what they did with people they just didn't like. That's what's relevant. Like, here are some quotes. No matter what we responded, the man was beating us. They don't care. They don't care. Torture is systematic. Russia systematically kills, tortures people in Ukraine. To this day, for over hundreds of days now. There are people from the beginning of invasion for many hundreds of days. Have you tried every fingernails being pulled out every day? Like, you think it's like 10 days it's over, but it doesn't end for these people. They're going mental. The one woman told Commission that she lost her teeth after soldier banged her head against the wall. Victims reported that perpetrators connected wires or clamps to earlobes, ankles, hands, toes, or genitals. Some perpetrators refer to this method as called a call to Stalin and a ride to a tram. You see, they're having fun. They're having fun because they are referencing Stalin. We need to remember that Russians are not some kind of a army that follows some kind of conventions or something else that just broke into Ukraine. This is not some kind of land conflict. They want to exterminate Ukrainians. They want to recreate the Stalin regime. They want to torture people. They are maniacs. They are crazy, violent maniacs that only want to kill, rape, steal, loot, and torture. It's enormous. This is UN report. You know, they wouldn't write something if there would not be evidence for it, because UN likes to say things, oh, you know, it's always two sides. These are the documents that are written by both siders, so to say. It was so painful that I could not stop screaming like crazy. I was crying. The Commission received reports regarding other methods of torture which have not been used consistently but were mentioned in relation to several facilities. These including mock executions, placing the victim's head in a barrel of water, called drowning, or slashing of various parts of body, depriving detainees of their sleep, forcing a victim to inhale or inject an unknown substance. Two victims died after the latter two practices. So they're doing it for fun, cutting off people for fun, making them drink stuff for fun. They are enjoying them. Like these are like killers, absolute inhuman killers. Did you forget who Ukraine is fighting? In the case of March 2nd, the Kiev province, the men reported about a 10-armed man in camouflage uniform and mask arrested him in the staircase of his apartment building, handcuffed him, and searched his flat. According to the victim, on the same day, the perpetrators brought him to the main building of the Security Service of Ukraine in Kiev. You know what I'm talking about right now? This is what Ukrainians did. There is a part in this whole document what Ukrainians did. And you can read it on the text. You can pause and read it through. And this thing talks about what Ukrainians did. Basically, first two paragraphs are describing Ukraine detains two people and then they beat up the other one. That's it. That's what these guys list. So we have on the Russian side, rape, torture, murder, children abuse, elderly abuse. We're going to get to all of that. And then on the Ukrainian side, they detained unlawfully two persons and then broke a rib for the other one. Wow. Absolutely comparable, right? In the case of investigated, the victims of rape were a 16-year-old girl and a woman aged from 19 to 83. In some cases, the same perpetrator raped the victims two or more times. In two cases, perpetrators gang raped the victims. One of the victims and her husband were shot dead by Russian soldiers after they reported they raped her. Perpetrators committed additional acts of violence against the victims of rape, including severe beatings, strangling, suffocation, slashing, and shooting next to the victim's head. So while they were raping her, they also used the violence to make sure that she bleeds out. In a number of cases, family members were present when the rape took place. There are instances in which perpetrators also committed crimes and violations against them, including killing, attempted killing, and torture. Read it. Fucking read it. It's not about the land, guys. Stop discussing the land. Stop discussing if this is a war for some territories. Stop discussing like this is like some philosophical discussion who is in the right, who is in the wrong. Read it. Thank you so much for watching. I love you all, guys. Slava Ukraini. I'll see you next time. Don't forget this.